back with Tracy, who's been sharing her story with adoption, and you've been kind of painting the picture of what it was like to have an unplanned pregnancy in a small town, and how you've kind of discovered or that, adoption was right for you, and that process of going through, not an easy process, that's for sure, but seems like the right one for your life. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the kind of experience after placement and kind of what that looked like. You shared a little bit with me about, the court date. That's a hard experience to have, but like a little bit, just from placement onwards, what was that experience like?
So we had identified the birth family ahead of time and had gotten pictures and a brief synopsis of their lives and who they are and the child they had already adopted previously. And I had been given the option before giving birth to meet them, and I had declined. I just felt that was a step that I couldn't do. But I knew, of course, as soon as I went into labor that they were flying into town. So I had the opportunity again after Ben was born to meet them, and I declined. I decided that was just an emotional situation that I wasn't equipped yet to handle. And having had that brief thought of, well, maybe I should keep him, maybe we should keep him and raise him. And I didn't want a momentary emotion and feeling, especially fueled by so many hormones, to change a plan that we had thoughtfully and purposefully chosen over that 9-month period of time. So I chose not to meet them. I did go back to the hospital after I left, and I took my dad with me, and we held Ben one more time and put him in the bassinet and left the hospital. So that was the last time I saw my son until he came back to us. So obviously very emotional. I mean, still 31 years later, it still gets me how hard that was. So the next step then was to go to the court. And again, small town, little courthouse. My dad was with me and went in front of the judge. And he was very stern is the word that comes to mind. But he just wanted to be really clear with me that I am severing all rights. It does not matter what we've agreed to. It does not matter that they've agreed to send me letters and pictures once a year. They could stop tomorrow. They could do whatever they want to after I sign those papers. And I was in court, and I signed the documents, and I said that I understood. And when I left the court, my lawyer gave me a necklace that the adoptive family had given her to give to me, which I still have. And so that was the end of the legal process for me, was to sign those papers. But then, of course, you've got all of the after process after having given birth and going through your body getting back into shape and getting back into what a life looks like without maternity clothes and without that baby with you all the time. And school had ended at that point because we were in summer break. And so I had way too much time on my hands and emotions. And so I kept myself as busy as I possibly could. But those hormones and those impulses to be a mom don't go away as much as you would like them to at that time, because you don't have a baby to mother. And my fiance and I got married a few months later, 6 months later. Actually went away to school. I had actually been accepted into a program to go to Australia for that term.
Cool.
Yeah, I was supposed to be in Queensland when I found out I was pregnant with Ben. So that plan got derailed. So I chose to go in the States instead. So it was easiest for me to just leave town and go somewhere completely different. So I went to University of New Hampshire for a fall term, saw the leaves changed, worked, did a full load of school, traveled everywhere I could while I recovered from that process. And started planning the wedding before I left, but couldn't try on wedding dresses or anything like that because I was still, after having the baby, your body's not where you want it to be. So I left town. And it was the best thing that I could have done to help reset my life because those emotions were just a lot to handle. So Kevin and I got married that December after Ben was born in May. And those hormones and those emotions are all still there as much as I tried to work through them. So we ended up having a baby pretty soon, relatively, after we got married. So Michael was born 2 years after Ben was born. So again, in college, taking school, working, pregnant with Michael. And at that point, we were ready to be parents. We had grown up and we were closer to graduating and better equipped. But I know for a fact that had we not had Ben, Michael probably wouldn't have been born for a while longer, because when I look back at how hard it was to have kids in college, probably would have been better to wait. But we were just at that point where it's like I want to be a mom so bad, because all of those feelings and emotions were still there. So it worked out wonderfully for us. We had 3 more kids after Ben was born. So he has 3 full-blooded siblings, which the reunion was just incredible, looking at how much he fits in with our family. And for him to have 3 full-blooded siblings, I think was really something very special for him, given he came from a broken home and didn't connect really well with his adopted sister. So to have this whole other family, and that's a whole other situation with adoptions that many adopting families struggle with, as I've talked to them, on what happens if my child reconnects with their birth family and or birth parents, and what does that look like, and a lot of fear surrounding that. And man, that was a big process too, reincorporating.
Wow, we'd love to hear Ben's story sometime. I know
He would love to.
We would try. We definitely want to try and get that happening. But how did that look like with your contact with Ben over the years? Because you said you could obviously send letters and things like that. Was that a frequent thing? Was that like, were you quite updated on his life?
Somewhat. His mom sent letters and pictures once a year on his birthday. That was what I had asked for. And when he was 5, we asked through our attorney if they were interested in 2-way communication, and they said they were not open to that. So all of the communication was one direction once a year. And roundabout when he was 10, the letters and pictures stopped. I found out later that's about when they got divorced. And we didn't get any more letters and pictures until about 5 years later, when they started coming again once a year. And so it was very hard not knowing what was going on with him. We registered with the Idaho Adoption Department or Commission, or I don't recall what it's called, but a way for him to find us. Come to find out later that his mom blocked his desires to see us. And it wasn't until his dad remarried and his stepmom said, it's time. He's been asking his whole life to meet his birth family, and it's time to let him do that.
Yeah, wow. The thing that like kind of sticks out to me is that a lot of young women have the sentiment of like the fear of the unknown of adoptive families, right? It's like you're making a decision. And sure, you do choose the family, right? And I think that's even something that a lot of young women don't know. Like, you do have the autonomy and the power to like choose a family, to kind of put your preferences in. But at the end of the day, like you said, that difficult day on a courtroom where you do kind of relinquish your parental rights, that must be scary. But you're kind of on the other end of it, looking back in retrospect now. Is there anything that you would have changed, or was there any moments that, you know, when you were starting to have your own children, that you thought, oh, like, you know, maybe we should have done, you know, something different?
I never looked back on what we should have done differently, partly because it was such a long process for me. It was the initial decision early on and then sticking with it throughout. I could see having more second guessing if I had waffled more, if I had not been sure if we were going to parent or not, and going back and forth, and then in the end making the decision to place him for adoption. we made the best decision that we could with the information we had at the time, and then just had to give it up to God to lead where it was going to go from there. I would have liked the opportunity to meet him sooner, but I also recognize that at the time that I placed him for adoption and I gave him to this other family, that I couldn't retain rights that I wasn't equipped at that time to say that I wanted to retain.
Yeah.
And at that time, I could not have handled having two-way communication. I probably wouldn't have chosen a family who wanted two-way communication. I have friends who have adopted who have and have had birth moms involved in their lives from the very first and invited all the birthday parties and all of the school plays and everything. And it's a beautiful, wonderful relationship. But in those cases, the birth mom chose that at the time. They chose a family who wanted that two-way communication. And I was too young and not emotionally equipped for that two-way relationship at the time.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great take of you making the best decision that you can in the moment with the information you have, right? That's what everyone's doing. And there are elements that are like within your control, but at the end of the day, I think systems are getting better to I think the home study system of making sure adoptive families are vetted well is a good system. I think a lot of young women don't know about it. They just think they're placing a child with who knows what, right? So I think systems are getting better, but yeah, just the faith in your own decision making and the faith in, okay, like this is what we've decided to do and we're going to see it through, is not just about adoption, right? That's about any option you'll choose. There's unknowns, there's risk, there's emotions. It's a difficult situation no matter what you pick. So you've done a bit of adoption advocacy, throughout your life. I'm sure you've answered a lot of questions about it. What are the top things that people say to you, or the kind of frequently asked questions that you get? And what does it kind of tell you about the public, society's perception of what adoption is?
So I've been very open about my adoption story and being a birth mom, and people are surprised when they talk to a birth mom who is so open about it, because there is still so much feeling of I've done something wrong. I got pregnant out of wedlock. I made a decision not to raise my child. There's all of these impressions that people still have, which would lead you to thinking that birth moms don't want to talk about what happened and the decisions that they made. And so the number of times I've talked with people about our story, and especially when they meet Ben and we're together now, they are encouraged and blessed, or just their impressions are changed from the story, that it's not every adoption story is one of shame. It's not a decision that's made out of default. It can be a decision that's made by choice, because it's the right choice out of the options that are available. I can't imagine anyone would ever say that they wanted an unplanned pregnancy. It's certainly not an optimal situation, but given the options that are available for adoption to be a choice, needs to be on the table. And so often it's just not brought up in conversation at all. It's such a two-sided discussion. And I would love to get adoption to the point where it's not the only experience people have with adoption is they know someone who adopted a child from overseas, which is, of the adoption stories I hear, that is 95% of them. There are so many other adoption stories in the U.S., family adoptions to, aunts and uncles, or, family members who adopt kids in their family unit who need to be cared for. I just would like it to be more of the conversation. And so by being open about it, I don't get a lot of questions or judgments from people. It's more an appreciation of another viewpoint on adoption that they hadn't heard.
Interesting. Because it's like your case is part of that 1% of unplanned pregnancies that result in adoption. Like that is such a small amount and so rare. What do you think it would look like if more women saw this as like a third viable option as opposed to maybe some outdated kind of concept that they don't really know too much about? Like what would that look like for young women?
Well, I know the effect that the adoption process has had on my life, which has been a very positive one. I believe that if more women see it as an option down the road in their life, they're going to see it as a blessing and as an opportunity that they've been given to give life to someone and to give a family to someone who otherwise hasn't been able to have a family of their own through biological means. And many times the adoptive families that I talk to have gone through years of heartbreak and IVF treatments, which are very expensive. And adoption is eventually where they get to because it's not an option that's thought of sooner. Because I don't know if the sense is there aren't enough children to go around or they want a new infant and the only way they can find them is to go overseas. I would like that discussion to be on the table sooner before people go into such financial debt that they do for IVF situations and the physical harm that some people go through as part of that process trying to have their own biological children. If the supply of infants that we had from unplanned pregnancies that currently are turning into family raising them in an unsafe situation for the child or abortions. So if we can convert more of those to children that are available for families, I think our families would be much better off.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful perspective. And I think focusing on what adoption can give the birth mothers can kind of restore their picture of the plan that they had for their life. And can give them vital resources that they need to be able to build up their future. And yeah, if you don't if motherhood is not what's right for you right now, but you still want to see, you still want to give life, and you are interested in amazingly impacting someone else's family. I think it's a great option that is just not talked about enough, right?
No, it's not.
So what would be kind of your advice to a young girl that finds herself in this situation? Unplanned pregnancy, doesn't know where to turn. How would you approach that conversation?
So I would love if young women who are in an unplanned pregnancy situation to feel like they have options and they have the ability to reach out to people who have been through the process before, because finding women who are open to talking about their adoption story and their adoption process is few and far between. So I would love to have more of those resources available so they could hear different perspectives on this is what it looked like for me. I can't say what it'll look like for you, but having an understanding of what it can be, as opposed to this big unknown of all I hear are negative stories and I'm going to have to deal with being pregnant and people asking me about it and carrying this child to term and all of the stuff I'm giving up. I would like to have enough information and stories out there and resources so they can see this is the opportunity I'm being given in a situation I didn't choose, but now I choose to have this child, to see it through, and to give it to a family who can't otherwise have their own.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What would you, just as a final question, like what would be the support and resources that you would have wanted to see if you could design a support system? I'm so glad that you were able to have a family that like kind of stood around you and supported you. But if you were able to say, hey, if I could have this or if I could have had this, it would have made that journey more accessible, a little easier, the burden lifted a little bit, what would those resources be?
Counseling is a huge part of it, both during the process and after, with someone who could understand, either having been through it or been appropriately trained on helping me develop responses to people who say, what are you naming it? Are you having a boy or a girl? When's the baby shower? And then when I would tell them that I'm placing the child for adoption, helping me develop responses to some of the problems that I ran into, including my own future in-laws. So that would have been very helpful for me. And then support afterwards, dealing with all of the emotions and all of the hormones, and helping me keep the longer term perspective of this is all very natural and normal, and you don't have a child to take care of, which many women have been through, whether it is placing for adoption or losing a child in childbirth or miscarriages. We all deal with those same post-birth or post-baby hormones. And so having people I could have talked to about that would have been very helpful. I had a sense of what to expect in way of being in the hospital and court, but I imagine many women aren't told what to expect ahead of time, so that would be very helpful. And then I know there are many women who don't feel able to make the decision to carry the child and place them for adoption because they could lose their housing, they could be in abusive or financially unstable situations. So to have resources available that could help them make the decision they otherwise would make if they had a stable home and financial support.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, because that's definitely like just the absolute underpinning of everything we're trying to do here. Because if you are, if you're on a journey and your eyes are closed because you can't, no one's showing you the road ahead, right? You can't kind of prep for that. But if someone's kind of guiding you and saying, this is what you can expect, this is the support we can give you, like the journey isn't easy still, but can be a lot more manageable, and you can feel like you're not alone. So that's definitely what we're trying to bring to young women. Well, that's been, I think, it's so good every time I get to hear your story and women's stories just like this, because I think it shows that there is something in this process of adoption that's so worth exploring and so worth making more accessible and so worth innovating around. It's a real encouragement to hear your story and to hear how you're encouraging women around you as well.
Thank you so much. It is very inspiring. I hope a lot of people hear this.
Happy to share.
Thank you.
Well, we don't know how long it'll be until we come back with hopefully another story to hear or another update from kind of what we're doing here at Planner. But for now, we'll just leave it there.
Thanks, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tracy.